Hello there and welcome to Competitive Elder Dragon Highlander Television. My name is Mons and I'm the host of this show, and currently I am making a budget series, videos on how to get into cEDH on a budget. And in this video we are going to be looking at commanders and game plans that are demanding only budget cards, meaning that the game plan is entirely on a budget. We will also be kinda looking on what cards could upgrade the deck and make the deck better. Cards that are of course a little bit more expensive. One more thing. In the description below of this video you will find a lot of links to different tapped out pages deck lists, but also links to deck tech videos from my channel about the things that I'm going to be showcasing, because I'm only going to be showcasing concepts. But if you want to find more information, that's a place you could look at. Let's begin with Yisan the Wandering Bard, who's a good example that can easily put together a good deck on a budget with a good game plan. So here is the game plan, here's the end game combo. You need Wirewood Symbiote, whatever elf, a creature that can tap for a tremendous amount of mana, and Tymna Saber Tooth. So here's the trick, you tap this for a tremendous amount of green devotion mana. If you have Yisan in play, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 green mana. Now you use this Wirewood Symbiote to return this random elf to her hand to untap the Karametra Acolyte. Then you use this ability to return Wirewood Symbiote. You now have a 4 mana left in your mana pool. Then you cast Wirewood Symbiote and this elf. We will draw a card from this, but we will also be able to reuse this Wirewood Symbiote's ability. This means that we can now untap this creature card again. This loop demands 5 mana, but we're generating 6 mana in the process. This means that we're netting 1 mana each time. This means that we have infinite amount of mana, but we also have infinite amount of untaps. That means that we can dig through our deck by climbing up the ladder and finding this creature card that costs 6 converted mana cost. With infinite mana and Tymna Sabertooth, we can flicker this creature card and deal infinite amount of damage. Voila! Yisan the Wandering Bard can also be upgraded by including something like Gaia's Cradle. That's kinda cool. So this is absolutely a good card for Yisan in general, but I've never felt that I actually need the amazing Gaia's Cradle land. In the end, I think Yisan operates quite fine on a budget, and I highly recommend him. Let's proceed with the Gitrog monster. So the Gitrog monster has a very good game plan that can be assembled by only demanding budget cards. Cards are either common or uncommon. So what you need on a basic level, a must-have, is Dakmor Salvage and a bunch of discard outlets. I think that this discard outlet might be the only expensive one, because this sees play in aggressive decks in Modern. In the end, however, there are other alternatives, so you will be able to find a bunch of maybe 5 to 7 discard outlets for you. And this is what you need to win the game. So one random whatever discard outlet. Let's use this hound, this dog. Your commander Gitrog Froggy Boss in play and Dakmor Salvage in your hand. And what you do is that you activate this dog's ability by discarding Dakmor Salvage, trigger Froggy Boss to draw a card, replace this effect by dredging 2, returning Dakmor Salvage to her hand, loop. From here you can put your entire deck into your graveyard, and whenever you hit a land card, Gitrog Monster will draw a card for you. Amazing, nice. However, here comes a budget problem. Kozilek. Whenever Kozilek enters the graveyard from anywhere, you will shuffle your entire graveyard into your deck. That means that you can loop this and then eventually draw your entire deck from this. And this is a 4 horseman combo build. You can actually do the same thing with Ulamog, but Ulamog is also quite expensive. That means that you can't assemble the Gitrog 4 horseman combo deck on a budget. But actually, I have an alternative. Necrotic Ooze. Necrotic Ooze is actually on a budget. Instead of looping our graveyard and putting cards inside our hand and drawing our entire deck, we can achieve this by only putting our entire deck into our graveyard. And then, with Necrotic Ooze inside our graveyard and the rest of our deck, We begin with casting from our graveyard Flashback Dread Return by sacrificing a bunch of creatures like Gitrog and some other dorks. And that will bring Necrotic Ooze into play. Now with our entire deck inside our graveyard, we can use this Tauntling's ability to give Necrotic Ooze haste for 1 green mana. Then we tap Necrotic Ooze for 3 green mana. Then we untap Necrotic Ooze with Pillapala's ability and gaining 1 mana. In this process you will generate 2 mana, giving you infinite mana. And then you can kill all your opponents with something like Walking Ballista. Put infinite +1/+1 counters on Necrotic Ooze, then just remove counters and kill your opponents. Now Walking Ballista is also a bit expensive, it isn't really on the budget, but there are other alternatives out there, other creature cards with activated ability that will win the game for you if you have infinite mana. Next up, Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal. Uncommon and common, and a rock solid, highly good competitive game plan in cEDH. Now of course, you can include some of the more expensive rocks to make this combo, or actually make this deck a little bit more stronger. But you don't actually need to. You can include only budget rocks and of course budget dorks, and some of these actually rocks are played even in the budget-less cEDH deck like Fellow's Stone. And the signets of course, and this one is sometimes kinda okay. If you're playing on a budget, you can definitely find enough stuff that is on a budget that you can include that are either good dorks or good rocks that will help you out achieving the infinite mana with Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal. And 2 good really strong commanders for this strategy is Tasigo and Thrasios. Faust Hulk is actually, believe it or not, budget possible. There are several different versions of Faust Hulk builds, like Hulk Weaver. You find Carrion Feeder and Comic Guide. This will return Hulk to play. Sacrifice Hulk to find Rev Li Ark. Sacrifice Comic Guide. Sacrifice Rev Li Ark to return Comic Guide. This will now return Hulk once more. Now you find Sufface Eric's Daughter and Blood Artist. Now you have a loop. Now you can sacrifice Eric's Daughter to put an effect on Rev Li Ark. That will return when it dies. Sacrifice Comic Guide. Then sacrifice Rev Li Ark. These 2 will now return to play. Comic Guide will now return Rev Li Ark to play. And you will have infinite Blood Artist triggers to kill all of your opponents. You can also go for the typical Breakfast Hulk. The only 2 cards you actually need are these 2, a common and uncommon. Grand Abolisher is just something cute you get extra from your Hulk. It's only here to give you some protection, but it's not needed, it's an upgrade. Let's remove it for the purpose. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna use these 2 cards' abilities to put your entire deck into your graveyard, and with your entire deck in your graveyard, we've already demonstrated a possible win on a budget with Necrotic Ooze. Let's stay on the topic of putting our entire deck into our graveyard game plan. Hermit Druid is actually a budget card, but is demanding that you don't play a single basic land whatsoever for it to work. Therefore, people are usually putting a lot of money into a mana base and are considering Hermit Druid to be one of the most expensive decks in the entire cEDH universe. However, they have been printing a lot of good and cEDH viable non-basic lands that are budget. And also one more thing, they have been reprinting shock lands quite a lot, meaning that you can find shock lands on a budget. So today you're actually able to put together Hermit Druid on a budget. Paradox Engine Captain sisay is in a really nice spot because they have actually got an upgrade. Mox Amber is an upgrade. And one more thing, you don't need both Mox Amber and Mox Opal, you only need one. Captain sisay was doing fine before Mox Amber was printed, and Captain sisay will be doing fine without Mox Opal, only going for Mox Amber. One more thing actually, Paradox Engine is actually kinda climbing in price, so in the future this deck might be a little bit more expensive. Food chain decks and General Tasri will never really be budget because food chain is expensive and a core piece for the deck, so you have to actually pay the money for food chain to be able to play that deck. So that is a deck that is not on a budget because of that. Breya is actually on a budget, or some of her builds are on a budget. You can build Breya in a lot of different ways, and some are budget possible and some are expensive. You can put together a good budget hate bear deck with Tymna and Crom. So there's a lot of good hate bears, and you can have a game plan filled with hate bears and trying to win the game with aggro or aggression or beatdown, you could say. Because hate bears, some of the hate bears are actually cEDH viable and on a budget. I don't think that Tymna Tana Blood Pod is on a budget because Birthing Pod Kiki are expensive. I don't think that you could put together a Narset Enlightened Master on a budget because a lot of extra turn spells and extra combat steps are expensive. Some of them are on a budget and some are expensive, so it's a really tricky spot. I guess that you could put together a Narset extra turns deck on a budget, but that would be a very strange build in my opinion. You could put together a Nayela on a budget, and you could put together a Nayela on a very expensive budget. In my opinion, Nayela demands a lot of very expensive lands, because she has a very tricky mana-based demand. Hermit Druid doesn't really have that expensive, tricky mana-based demand as Nayela does. So in my opinion, Nayela is probably not on a budget unless you only want to have Nayela as your color identity commander and don't really care anything about her activated ability. And that kind of wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any wish to see a specific commander deck take video, or maybe a budget deck take video on a specific commander, ask away in the comments below and I will see what I can do. I'll see you in the next video.